Culture as a concept has always fascinated me because of how strongly it controls the environment and the stories of the people who live in it, for better and for worse. Whenever I'm not creating these flawless cartoon videos on this channel, I've actually spent my offline life living in several areas of the world that are considered obscure, doing some kind of odd job or another to justify being there, and in the process getting to know several different kinds of communities. It feels a lot like Kingdom Hearts for me, actually, where I show up to a new place and the rules are totally different each time, and I have to learn them in order to achieve some basic acceptance from each new community I find myself in. I'll try to avoid the common talking points of traveling so that my video isn't super unoriginal. Like, yes, the food variety is awesome and it adds so much spice to life. It sounds like a pun was intended there, but it actually was not. And I will say that spicy food is indeed awesome. And the different fashions of different areas is some great aesthetic variety that really appeals to the artist in me as well. On the negative side of this, yes, there are also places that are lagging behind on social issues such as LGBT acceptance or women's rights, and prejudices such as colorism and certain areas' beauty standards, which is always really painful to see going on and having no power to change as an outsider to the community. So this is where I'm going to take a deeper dive into what I've actually learned, a completely honest look at the role of culture and how it impacts our lives. I'll start with the negatives so that the video will end on a positive note, so that those of you who are huge fans of culture as a concept and might not like my criticisms, don't worry, I'll have plenty of good things to say after my initial critiques. The first problem is that the role of culture can often be very ableist. I often joke with friends that I seem like just as much of a weirdo at home as I do abroad, but there is truth to that. There are minute details of cultures that put a lot of control over how we're expected to simply exist as people. For example, expectations to eat in a specific way or move around in a specific way. And when you fail to do things in exactly the way that the people around you are doing it, you'll often get treated at worst without respect, or at best like you're just being an idiot. Even if this failure to conform in something so second nature as body movements isn't actually having any negative impact on anyone else. I don't think that this is even a necessary hang-up for human beings to have about each other, controlling how we're supposed to move, but those expectations are often there nonetheless. And as someone who just does not move around in the same way that anyone anywhere does, I can't help but frequently get disrespected over something that I'm not really able to control. I'm just wired a bit differently, and I'm definitely not the only one like that, and this should not make any of us any less worthy of respect. The second problem is that British imperialism or American imperialism or any similar kind of imperialism is often felt very powerfully in the ways of many cultures. Outdated views on gender and race and sexuality and etc. are often tightly wound into the fabric of these communities' belief systems to the extent that even questioning the negative treatment of women or the negative treatment of black people or the negative treatment of homeless people or etc. is considered completely out of the question. And I don't mean just for outsiders to the community either, but often for the actual community members themselves. It also often makes me question just how much original thought and genuinely unique cultural aspects have been lost over time due to this outside influence. I often have a major feeling of what if this community wasn't forced to conform to the materialist ways of capitalism, or what if white Christianity wasn't absolutely enforced on this community's belief systems. That imperialism has often not even allowed several communities to think differently, making it difficult to have open-minded discussions about how we should improve our economic systems for the poor because of how much capitalism has been enforced on them as the only way of life globally, or genuine conversations about faith that aren't talking points which have been forced onto the community by one empire or another. But here's where I start talking about the positives. The way that faith brings communities together is often a genuinely beautiful thing to witness. For example, I have witnessed how Christian beliefs can inspire certain communities to help their poor, and how it inspires the community members to care about one another and try their best to be good people in their everyday lives. While I have problems knowing that the origins of these belief systems introduced into these communities is usually loaded with problems, and that's an understatement, it is still great to see the current generations of these places making the best of their pasts in this way, and using it to empower themselves to find common ground with one another. It is also wonderful to have so many legends to learn about across so many places. It really appeals to the storyteller in me and helps me see the world through some new lenses. Often, this is where some of my best learning learning happens. Even when the morals of certain stories may be outdated, experiencing the stories of other cultures still inspires some good deep thinking in me nonetheless. And not just in ancient legends either, but the modern tales of so many places can often really hit on issues in ways that I hadn't seen before. In particular, despite never getting the chance to go there yet, I'm going to give serious props to the recent media coming from South Korea. Both the Oscar-winning Parasite and the hugely successful Netflix series Squid Game really get to the heart of some of our worst economic issues globally. While the global dominance of Hollywood and the general role of imperialism in so many places has unfortunately pushed a very flawed narrative onto all of us very strongly, these gems of original storytelling still shine through, proving that the very unique voices of people from all of these cultures can still prevail through it all. So yeah, in a nutshell, the ableism and other discriminatory beliefs inherent in many cultures to some degree is bad. The loss of original identity due to clear imperial influence is bad, but the power of faith and community bringing optimism to the people, no matter what form of belief that faith comes in, is good. And the stories tied to the culture are often good, along with the food and the fashion, of course. This leads to my final point. Since this channel is all about animation, one dropped project that looked like it was going to be super interesting was recorded by Arizal from Isa Badiola of Rooster Teeth. She is of Filipino descent, and while she said that recorded by Arizal was not going to be completely tied to Filipino culture, it was still going to have an influence on it. I've never been to the Philippines myself. I think the closest I've gotten is Malaysia, so I'd really benefit from seeing that story and learning about the cultural influences behind it, especially because of its extremely endearing main character and beautiful art style. So Issa and Rooster Teeth, I strongly encourage reviving your series, and I'm happy to lend my voice to help if you need a chill narrator with a bad microphone. In any case, I hope you find some sort of value in my own critiques but also praises of culture, and that you all have a wonderful new year.